Welcome to another episode of Marriage on a Tightrope. This is Allan.
And I'm Katie.
And we're still married. Our kids are also playing Fortnite in the other room, so you might hear some gunshots.
Pew, 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 pew.
So we're going to do a few things different today. We're actually not going to edit. So Katie, you need to be careful about what you say. You need to be careful about your ums, as do I.
This is a hard one because I always tell Allan to edit, because I want to sound good.
That's right.
In this podcast. But this time I have no excuses. If
No
I
excuses.
give a pause or or a wait, take that out,
Don't
y'all
say
will
that.
hear it.
That's right. Y'all?
Y'all will
See, there's your first example of something we wish that wouldn't have been said.
Nope. I stand by my y'all. Y'all.
This is also exciting because this episode is releasing on our 1-year anniversary from our very first episode.
Happy anniversary
To
of
us.
the podcast to us.
We should open a night lounge and sing together.
And they would all be original songs, wouldn't they?
Of course. Well, we wanted to celebrate this first year. In fact, Katie, why don't you explain? Because it was your idea.
It was my idea. I thought it would be fun to go back to our previous episode, episode 1, and listen through it, and then talk about what has changed from 1 year ago to now. And it was fun to listen to us talk for that very first episode.
It was.
I could tell that I was super nervous, and I don't know what the word is. I was just more reserved with how I felt, and
Right.
So it was fun.
I'm going to adjust the mic. It fell down a little bit. But again, we're not editing this out.
Anyway, so I think that it was fun to listen through, and we both came up with some pretty good questions for each other about where we were a year ago and talk about where we are now.
Compared to
A
then.
year later. And I know some listeners, some of you have just joined the podcast. Welcome. And so you've kind of had I don't know what the word is.
You've been able to
gorge on the
you've
the last
binge listened.
binge listen to the last 18 episodes. And so it'll be a quick turnaround for you guys to hear where we are versus then. But for those listeners who have been with us since the beginning, maybe they're not listening. Who knows? But maybe you are interested in some of the stuff that we talked about, or maybe you don't remember what we talked about. So we're gonna go with that.
Okay, we've got a few questions written down.
Yes, we do.
Why don't you go ahead and answer the first question and why you're asking it? Basically, what you heard in that first episode when you re-listened that made you want to ask that again.
Okay, so my first question for Allan is, in the first episode, Allan talked about how he still found value in going to church. And for him, he wanted to be there, and he was still there with us. 1 year later, Allan, where are you? We just went to 2-hour church, and so has that helped? Does that matter? Do you want to go? Let's talk about that.
Well, the question you asked was, are you comfortable at church? Are you still comfortable at church? Because I think that's how I put it in the first episode. The truth is, I wouldn't say I'm comfortable there. It's not always easy to be there, but I think the discomfort has slowly turned into apathy, which basically is meaning like, I don't care to go for the most part. I think in December, we've talked about this in our last episode when we talked about coming out publicly, both on your Instagram and on my Facebook, that I stopped going altogether. This past Sunday, I did go to both hours. First time in Elders Quorum in 10, 11 months, maybe. And that was eventful.
Eventful is right. We won't go into any details, but
there was, look, as you can tell, very public persona, both on stage and on a podcast. I don't sit idly by if I want to participate in a conversation, I will. I don't let if I feel differently than the prevailing thought in the room, that doesn't dissuade me from making comments. So I made a few comments, and I had it back and forth with a few people. It was respectful, but we did disagree, and that's fine. It was good. So, I mean, for me, I honestly, this is a kind of a big topic. We probably should do our own episode. We will do our own episode around deconstructing versus reconstructing. So a lot of your typical faith crisis or faith transition is deconstructing what you used to believe and spending a lot of time on that. And it's a natural part of that, but I'm feeling myself less and less inclined to continue the deconstruction, which is focusing on things I don't believe. And I'm feeling more and more of a pull to reconstruct, meaning what is spirituality or what does self-reflection look like to me now? So we'll leave it there because I think it's absolutely worth having our own episode about that because we've had some recent conversations about that.
Yeah.
What do you see about church attendance for me? And what does it mean to you?
That's a good question because I think last year I was in a place where I did not want to be there alone. I was so afraid of what people would think or say. And besides that, I have 4 kids and it's just a nightmare to be in church with them alone. Now, though, looking at today, it's easier if Alan's not there. I'm not constantly like wincing at things that people say and then looking over at him and saying, I'm so sorry, and having to apologize for what's being said because I know it's hurting him. And I don't know, church is so quick now, and primary is just like a blink of an eye, and I feel like I'm just running the whole time. So it's, to me, I just feel fine going alone with the kids now, and I definitely did not feel that before a year ago, but I think I've kind of come into my own where I feel more comfortable with it.
That's good. Is how much, if any, of that is of you being more comfortable without me being there? How much of any of that is a recognition of what it is like for me to be there? Does that make sense? You mentioned like knowing that something is hurting me. It's difficult when I'm there. If I'm not there, you know it's not hurting me. Right. So, for example, earlier today, because I went last week, we were talking about if I'm going to go tomorrow, and I made the comment of just a natural reflex for me to say, well, I mean, do you want me to, I'll come. If you'd like me to come to a sacrament meeting, I'll come. And you immediately said, what?
You don't have to.
No, it wasn't even that. What did I say? It was, no, that's not what we're going to do here.
That was today?
That was today. That's not what we're going to do here. I'm not going to put that on you. If you want to come, then absolutely come.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying.
I could see you even 4 or 5 months ago, if I'm saying like, if I'm kind of indifferent and saying, well, I can come, I can not come, you'd be like, well, I'd appreciate it. Like, it'd be great if you came. Right. And now you're like, hold on.
Yep, I'm not going to make the decision for you.
If it's good for you, if you want to come, you can come. Yep. And from my side, that's appreciated. Yes. I feel like you're taking into account, not taking into account, you're leaving it up to what I find value in. If you find value to come. But if not, then I'm fine.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, I do feel like I don't want to be the one to make the decision. Before, I felt like I should have a say in it, but now I just feel like you do what's best for you. I'm going to do what's best for me, and I feel like for me, I want to be there. I want the kids to be there. If you don't want to come, fine. Right. Okay, so on to the next question. In the first episode, we talked about how Allan had a lot of anxiety and depression surrounding some of the things that he learned and how those feelings really just bottled up inside because he couldn't tell me and he couldn't explain what was going on. And that was during it was like the very first year. And he was learning things and he would kind of just push them down and he would have panic attacks and some other things associated with that. So I wanted to know, now that you're out in the open and everybody or anyone who's on Facebook or knows us knows where you're at, have you had relapses of anxiety and depression? And what does that look like for you now?
No, perfectly mentally healthy. Next question.
Is this one we should try to avoid?
No, at all. I'll talk about whatever. So, yeah, no, I wouldn't say I've had any relapses of depression. I think that there has been anxiety, and much of it is tied to the same reasons why I had it before, of when I do try to stifle my thoughts or not voice them, I tend to feel anxiety about that. There was a very recent experience just within the last week of a number of things did not fall my way, and all of them regarding the church. Conversations with people I wish had gone differently. I had a listener that reached out and said, I can't talk to you anymore because my wife threatened divorce, so I'm trying to distance myself from anything that could be perceived a threat to that. And I completely understood, and I said, good for you, take care of your marriage. But it was that plus a few other things that, as we talked about in the first episode, we're not going to get personal and call out leaders or family or anything like that. But a few conversations, just one after another, really hit hard. And I shut down and felt a lot of anxiety because of it. Some of that was a conversation with Katie about, we're still actually haven't talked about it a bunch since, so we're going to have to do another episode. We're committing to a lot of episodes here. We're going to have to do another episode on, I feel very strongly that it's a good thing that Katie and I feel differently, because that can be a big gift in our kids' lives, but we have to be open about it. We have to give them that option of, hey, look, I believe this, your mom believes that, and that's okay. Katie's not quite comfortable being that open yet.
I think that's where we should leave that.
All right. We'll have to think and talk more and do another episode in the
Yeah,
future.
that's right. I got to think about this.
So, very briefly, I won't tell the full story, but on Monday, I was feeling very anxious. And just this past Monday, it's Saturday now, so just a few days ago. And I told Katie about it, and she said, do you want to get an appointment with the massage person? And I said, sure. And we have a lady that we've been going to for a while. And I went there, and it was very healing, both on the physical side and on the spiritual side, however you want to define spirituality. But she kind of talks you through a few things as she's rubbing you. And it was awesome. It was a really good experience. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, and I think what it was important that Allan did is that he opened himself up for just letting things happen as they were, and not being cynical, and not being a naysayer of what other gifts people have. She's a really spiritual person, and she's a healer, and Allan and I we both recognize that. And so the fact that Allan was willing just to say, well, I'm just going to let things happen the way that they're going to happen, and I'll just be open to it. And I think because of that, you gained quite a bit. Yeah,
I did. And I, some of the things that she said, a lot of people, and myself included, would look at that and say, that's fortune teller stuff. That's ridiculous. But for whatever reason, whether it's because you're vulnerable, naked on a table, and she's relaxed you with rubbing your back, it was just a place where that there was no judgment. It was just, I'm just going to let this happen and be open to this experience. And I'm glad that I was, because it was really neat. It made me think, like, I wish I could do that to everything. And I think in some ways...
Be naked on a table.
Be naked on a table, yeah. I want to be naked on a table with someone rubbing me everywhere I go. No, I think what I mean by that was it was a new experience that I was able to, without judgment, just participate in. And it made me think about this reconstructing of kind of spirituality that I'm trying to focus on now, of just, I want to go and try different things. I want to go and, like Katie mentioned, let's try some yoga. Great, let's try some yoga. I've listened to a secular Buddhist podcast. It's super interesting. And it's just all from the perspective of what do other people value and what is something that drives and brings meaning to other people. I think that's fascinating. And I think that would end up being something, as I embrace that anxiety levels would decrease, because I'm filling a void with what used to be filled by the church.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to note that just because you are out in the open and I think people know where you're at, it doesn't mean that you don't still get that feeling of anxiety or once in a while become depressed about things that are happening, because this is life, and it doesn't automatically mean that everything is cured. That doesn't happen.
I think that's a really, really good point. And I think that I've fallen into the trap, and we've even talked about this, of being so concerned that when we're around people that we know are looking for any reason to point at me and say, oh, you're not happy, that's because you left. That we've been like, okay, well, I've got to go, and for the next 3 hours when I'm in this group of people, I have to put on a happy, happy face and be this shining example of, see, you can be happy too. It doesn't matter if you're in or out of the church. When really I've just had a really hard day at work. And that's why. So there are legitimate reasons to feel anxiety and depression that have nothing to do with religion or belief.
And for Allan, I think you wear your
emotions
on your sleeve. I can tell immediately if he's like what mood he's in, and
even through text messages. If I'm not using exclamation points and emojis, Katie knows something's going on.
Something's up.
That's right.
I can tell really easily. With others, it's not so easy to tell. Some people are pretty even kill, but I think that just you do feel a lot of relief once you're out, but at the same time, like the other stresses of life don't just go away.
Yeah, and there's residual impact, and we can get on to the next question here in a second. The buzzer's going off in my head saying we've been on this one for too long. But I'll say this. Don't feel like you have to pretend or continually say that everything is great now that you've left or now that you don't believe something anymore. Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of people in my position are so focused on trying to prove or trying to be that example of
that they're happy.
You can be happy. Mm-hmm. There is a traumatic experience that you go through when you discover, I'm speaking from my person's perspective, when you discover the things you once held so closely as to part of your identity are not what you thought them to be. Of course there's sadness, and of course there's pain, and there's anger, and there's lashing out. Of course that's part of it. So don't feel like you always have to be, yes, try to be optimistic and try to move forward. But there is that part of the experience as well that, man, you can't be happy about this.
Yeah.
All the time.
And on the other side, it's you, me, looking at my life and saying, this is not what I signed up for. I married you in the temple, and we signed up to go on a mission together when we're old. Like, why are you changing your mind about all of this? And that's hard too. And I'll just say this. I also went to the healer. We'll just call her the healer. I went to the healer, and one thing she said is, Katie, you have so much sadness in your heart, and you just need to give it away. Just give it to Jesus. And I really liked that. I really liked a lot of the things she said to me. And so just know that it gets better, but it doesn't. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. I mean, life still happens, and Allan still has his moments of depression and anxiety, and I do as well. And so we're not perfect. We're a year out, and it still comes in waves.
If you've ever lifted weights for long periods of time, consistently, you never stop being sore. You're always sore. You're just used to it. I feel like the last year has been that way for us. Is that the the struggles and having to talk through things and the difficulties of a mixed faith marriage, they don't go away. You just get better at handling them, and you get used to working through a lot of these issues.
Yeah, I like that example.
Dude, tight, thanks.
Okay. Tight.
Cool. We watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine quite a bit.
Oh, gosh, that show is awesome. Okay. One other thing that I listened to in the podcast was I was worried about the lifestyle changes, the veering that would happen if we weren't on the same page. And so, I mean, a year later, where are we? Do we have major lifestyle changes that are different than a year ago? What is different?
Not really. I mean,
No.
the big change before we even started recording last year, probably 3 or 4 months before that, I had stopped wearing garments. So that wasn't a change from the first episode.
Yeah.
I've probably had 10 to 12 cups of coffee since we recorded the first episode, and I hadn't before that. And
Alan's
was that a hard thing for you?
I think when I first found out, I was really annoyed. I think annoyed is the word, because I didn't feel like coffee was bad, but I was annoyed that you had done it and you told me about it, and I still was annoyed. Alan's drug of choice is Monsters. When I say drug, I mean drink of choice. Drink of choice is Monsters.
And I went 30 full days. I quit for 30 full days.
And then you just went back to
But
it.
I used to do 2 a day, and now I don't do 2 a day.
Well, that's beside the point.
I do like 3 or 4 a week.
Anyway, but we actually have a really funny story about this. Alan, when he has drunk coffee, it's always been on trips,
It's
right?
been at work, yeah.
It's been at
'cause
work
we've got
or
a coffee
trips.
machine at work.
Right. And so...
Somebody gifted me over the Christmas break. They gifted me a single serve, similar to like a hot chocolate cocoa mix, but it was a coffee mix. You just mix it up, and we were sitting down at the table to play a family game, and I made it. I microwaved the water, and I opened up the coffee packet and dumped it into my water and stirred it up, and then the whole family's at the table.
Our 6-year-old, I look at her and she's plugging her nose and she says, "Ew, what is that smell?" And we are...
It smells like dirt.
And we just busted up. I busted up laughing.
Katie looked at me and just put her hands in her face.
Oh, it was
and
so funny.
Her face in her hands, and she was just laughing out of control. I was laughing hard. It was one of those moments where, again, maybe a year ago, if this would have happened, Katie would have ran out of the room crying. But it was just one of those funny things that was like, oh my gosh, that's really funny.
Yeah, it was really funny, and there hasn't been that smell in our house since. So
That's right.
Our kids did not appreciate that smell. It was a good tester.
Right. How was, what about alcohol?
Nope.
No alcohol?
No alcohol.
What happened on our anniversary?
We didn't drink alcohol.
No, I
You
know.
didn't drink alcohol.
I'm that, I know, I was there. Sorry, you don't like it when I say "der."
No. This is the part that would be edited.
Not gonna happen. So we went to Cheesecake Factory,
Yeah.
and I mentioned, "Hey, I'm ready to try this if you'd like." And what was your response?
No.
And for me, it was like, "Okay, that's fine." And I'm not. Again, I feel like this is an important topic to talk about, because I think that is, of lifestyle changes, the most common number one thing that we get in emails is, "Oh my gosh, he's drinking," or "He really wants me to drink," or "He really wants to drink," and
Whether it be socially or casually,
right,
or
not he wants to go get wasted and drive a car, but it's he's out with work friends, or we went out with some friends last night, and it's kind of a mixed active versus not members crowd, and some were drinking, some weren't. It's that type of a drink, and for me, I'm still at this point, and I'll just this maybe is helpful to reaffirm for you, Katie, that I don't see anything wrong with it, but I also don't feel like, I know that some people have felt like this is my feeling, and my spouse doesn't get to control my feeling. So if I'm going to do it, she's got to deal with it. Or that's a little bit misrepresenting what some people's discussions have been with their spouses. But I don't feel like this big pull to do something that I know is really going to be hard for Katie. So I've always maintained, I think we've even said in a previous episode, that I want my first glass of wine to be across the table from Katie as she's drinking her first glass of wine. And Katie's response to that is,
well, that will never happen.
Then I say, so be it. And that's where I'm at right now. And of course, things change and we have conversations as things go
We'll
on.
do a 2-year episode.
See where we're at.
2-year anniversary episode. See
That's
where
right.
we're at. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
I wanted to ask you a question. You described yourself or self-defined yourself as a TBM. Can you remind, that was in the first episode, so it's been a year. Can you remind our wonderful listeners, not viewers, thank goodness I haven't showered, but our listeners, what a TBM is and if you would still consider yourself a TBM?
Gosh, that's a hard one. So TBM is
I'm not the only one that gets hard questions. You get them too.
I know, I do. TBM is referring to true believing Mormon or true blue Mormon. One of the two. I think that I would say I would be an NBM. A nuanced believing Mormon.
A nuanced believing Mormon. Okay.
Yeah. Hashtag that. So I think
I think you're right. I think that's an accurate.
I think that's an accurate way of saying it. I recognize so much of what happens, the good and the bad, the healthy and unhealthy things that happen. But I still believe, and I believe in. I don't know. What percentage would you put me at believing?
That's hard to say.
Yeah, there are some things that I dismiss, and there are other things that I really still believe in. And so, for that reason, I recognize that there's a lot of hurt that happens, and that there are things that the church could be better at.
Sure.
At the same time, I'm still choosing to be part of it.
Yeah, and that's fair.
Yeah.
Yep. So, I don't know. Anything else? I think that's all the questions that we had for this one. We just wanted to say thank you so much for those that have stuck with us for a year. Here's to another year. And as kind of a preview of things to come, we have 2 interviews already scheduled. We're doing one of them tomorrow night with Nick and Chelsea Homer. Mm-hmm. And then next Thursday, we have an interview with, let's see if I can pronounce this name right.
You're such a bad poker player.
Gina Colvin and Nathan McCluskey are going to join us for in our first transcontinental interview from New Zealand, and we are both very excited about both those interviews and extremely worried that we will look very stupid and silly to Gina and Nathan.
Right. We're going to be saying like little 2-liners, and we're just going to let them take over because they are both very well spoken and very intelligent people. And we're very excited that they have accepted to be on the podcast.
Thank you to Nathan for reaching out and telling me he'd like to do it.
Just to put it out there, we will be in California for a couple weeks at the end of March. And if you are in California, San Diego, we'll be in Santa Barbara, we'll be in Anaheim. If you are in the area and you would like to go to dinner with us, have us over for dinner because we'll have our kids with us. So
buy us dinner, gifts. We'll leave room in our bags to pack for gifts if you want to. I'm just kidding.
No.
If you'd like to meet up, we would love
to meet you. I know that a lot of you live outside of Utah, and you've contacted us. And anyway, we'll be in California for a couple weeks, and we really don't have any set plans. And so if you want to meet us, our family at the beach, let's do it. We love to meet those of you out there who are in the same boat as us. And I got an email from a woman a couple of days ago, and I love the email. She said that she'd listened to all the podcasts, and she said, please keep doing them, and I feel like I can call you friends. And I thought that was nice because I hope that when you listen to us and we talk about these things that you do feel like you're our friends, because you are. And we're allowing very intimate and vulnerable sides of us to be shared on this podcast. And we would love to hear you and your story and meet up with you and just meet you. So if you're in the California area, please feel free to text us. Well, we haven't given out our number. Okay.
I'll give my number, and we're not editing.
I'll
give you my number.
No.
801.
No, stop. Okay, so you can email us at Marriage on a Tightrope. You can
at
gmail.com. You can go to Instagram and follow us at Marriage on a Tightrope. And also, last time we gave our names, Allan and Katie Mount. So you can find Allan on Facebook. I'm not, but if you want to just send him a Facebook chat, that works also.
Yes. For those that are in the Phoenix area, Katie won't be with me. It's a boys' trip. The end of February and
I'm just going to
show
up.
March. Oh, you better not. I go down for spring training, big baseball net. So I'm down there. So if you're in the Phoenix area, reach out. I'll be down there the last week of February, beginning of March. The whole purpose of this podcast has not changed. And that ties into us kind of telling you where we're going to be, because the whole purpose of the podcast is for you to see that you're not alone. There are so many people that are experiencing this. And one thing that I still agree with our very first episode is that while there are difficult things that happen in the introduction of a mixed faith marriage, there are difficulties with that. There are absolutely huge blessings that go along with it. And Katie and I are much closer in many ways than we ever were before, and we would not have reached those levels of closeness, of intimacy, we can say, without this having to deal with a mixed faith marriage. So we're very grateful for the experiences we've had, even though they are very difficult. So you are not alone in this. Just remember that.
And hopefully, if you don't reach out to us, you have someone in your inner circle that can be your cheerleader or your helper, and that you can confide in, and that will help you along your way, because it makes such a huge difference.
And both spouses, no matter which side you are on, not that we're taking sides, allow for your spouse to have that. And know it can be so hard for the believing spouse to see their spouse texting with a brother or a friend that feels the same way and feel like they are just going to be dogpiling on top of each other. And same thing if your believing spouse has a friend that is all in and her husband left and has now come back, and you're just worried like, oh my gosh, this is going to be tough. That we are such a social species. We have to have connections. So allow them to have those connections, and hopefully they don't get too toxic in some of the conversations that can happen.
Right. And you can always contact us. We keep it pretty light, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. I've had a number of believing spouses reach out recently to kind of get my perspective on a few things. And people are brand new coming into this dynamic of a new relationship all the time. So we're 2 years in. There's certainly people that are many more years in than that. But there are people every day that in the emails we get. Last week, my husband told me. 2 weeks ago, my wife let me know that ... There are very fresh feelings that are happening here. So please, neither Katie nor myself, we are not in an angry place anymore.
Were we ever? Yes, you were.
Yeah, we were.
We both were. Yes.
And so, if you need to reach out again, I think we're saying this for the 12th time. Please do. The last thing I'd like to say, in honor of the umbrella under which we live here in this podcast world, the last thing I'd like to say for our 1 year anniversary is thank you very much to Bill Reel.
Yes.
Who has given us, that was one thing that as I listened to the first episode, I was surprised that I didn't mention Bill. Yeah. But I think the reason is because we recorded it before we knew he was going to publish it.
He said, record it. And then he listened to it and then he said, well, I'm publishing it. And
That's
we were
right.
like, what?
We're like, ugh. So, Bill, thank you so much. I know
thank you, Bill.
2018 was a very big, both in very good and in difficult ways for you, Bill. I feel very personally blessed to know you, to be able to text and call whenever I need to, for your introduction, for me to Radio Free Mormon, who I've actually interacted with more than with you, Bill, and he's been a very good friend for me as well. I'm very grateful for Skylar and Wendy and Jack Nanique and just everyone under the Mormon Discussions banner has been just a great friend for both of us.
We love you guys.
Thank you very much for listening to Marriage on a Tightrope. You will see our next episode with Nick and Chelsea Homer within the next 7 days. It matters how quickly I can edit it. And I already know, even though I haven't recorded it yet, it was just absolutely in the top 3 interviews we've done to date. Because it's literally the 3rd interview we've done to date.
Literally.
We'll see you next time, everybody.